Shalom. So today we're going to talk about forgiveness. Everything we need to know about it. All right. So we're going to look into understanding the core of our existence. So we're going to look at our existence, the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. And this is going to aid us in understanding our authentic self, because a lot of us really don't know. We use words carelessly, but we really don't understand. So we're going to go through this exercise to understand our authentic self and the core of our very existence. What is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness? We need to be able to discern between the two, because a lot of times we put up with behaviors that we weren't supposed to because we think that is actually forgiveness, right? So we need to discern between the two. So in this knowing, we're going to expand our awareness so we can let go of beliefs that are not conducive to our health, to our mental and spiritual health, right? Why should we forgive? We need to know why. Because sometimes we think forgiveness is for the other person or is a privilege to the other person. Or sometimes we don't forgive because we think they are going to perceive that we are weak. But that has nothing to do with your purpose for forgiving, right? So we're going to explore that aspect as well. Because of our misunderstanding of our purpose for forgiving, it also affects our understanding when it comes down to what actually happens when we don't forgive. Because when you don't forgive, you're not doing something to the person that hurt you or did you wrong. The only person is being affected by your unforgiving self is yourself. And the worst part of it is everyone else who comes into your life also gets a dose of that poison, because that's really what it is. You're destroying yourself, you're poisoning yourself with resentment, bitterness, anger, and then everyone comes in, gets a taste of it, and it's not fair to them. But you see, the unconscious ego does not know this, because it gets a form of fulfillment, which we're going to explore, as I said. What is our authentic self? This is something that a lot of us are not really clear with. We use the word I carelessly, but most of the times we're just really referring to our unconscious ego. We don't know who we really are. This I changes according to the situation. So this minute I am this minute I am that, and we don't have a steady identity because it changes every time. This is just the unconscious ego thinking it is a self. So all those beliefs we form from past experiences, from this culture that we grow up in, that is where our ego derives from. That is where our ego comes from. It's a modulation of external environment and internal beliefs. So it keeps changing. Your authentic self does not change regardless of your experience, regardless of the culture, regardless of what life throws at you. When you understand your authentic self, it's going to go into the next question, which is, who is doing the forgiving? Because a lot of times people want to try to forgive with the mind or with the ego. Forgiveness is not a duty of the mind or the ego. The unconscious ego cannot forgive because it is a belief, and that belief holds on to grudges. It holds on to pain, identifies itself with the pain, identifies itself with the grudge. So it cannot forgive. So the more you hold on to that grudge, that resentment, that hurt, that pain, is the more you hold on to that false identity of yourself. So we need to understand who is really doing the forgiving. The next question is, how do you know when you are healed from a hurt? A lot of us really don't know. And like I said, the unconscious ego, it It is responsible for most of the things we do. And we're operating from this standpoint and don't realize it. So the ego's way of dealing with problems is to do what? Force it out of awareness. So once everything goes into this unconscious ego, unconscious memory, you know what? You can always pretend it's not there. And once you're in denial that the problem is the problem, then you don't need to fix anything. And now the ego is so subtle that its way of dealing with these types of situations is to do what? Take up somebody with more problem than you. So the fact that you can point out this problem, that problem, that problem, always judging, condemning somebody else, it causes you to overlook yourself because all your attention is going everywhere else. This is why he says the mold that is in your eye, there's a beam in our eyes, and then we're trying to take out the mold out of somebody's eye. Psychology calls it codependent, right? Now, when can a person ask for your forgiveness? When can we ask the Most High for forgiveness? Because a lot of us, what we do the sin, we go and pray and ask for forgiveness, right? Because a lot of you think that's what forgiveness is. Go and pray about something that you did, only to go back and do it next week. That's a wrong concept of forgiveness. So you need to know when you're in a position to ask the Most High for forgiveness, when you're in a position to ask that person you did wrong for forgiveness. It's not about, just like I said, the unconscious ego is ruling. So its way of doing things is just to say, okay, the person needs to hear this or hear that. Let me comfort him or her with the words that they want to hear. But like I said, this forgiveness is bigger than the ego. The ego and the mind has no part in this, right? So this is why I said again, this is a very important aspect of what we're going to go through, because we need to understand this to understand the subject. Now, what is an apology? For us, for a lot of us, is I am sorry, right? But it's way more than that, because you cannot just go to the Most High and say, I'm sorry I did this, or I'm sorry I did that. Is that how you repent? No. Now, the next question is, should you punish someone even after you forgive them? The Most High says He forgive us, but He still put us through slavery, right? So I guess that answers the question, but now we're going to explore these questions one by one so we can have a clear understanding, and also we can liberate ourselves from the bondage that we are in. So let's get into it. So we are in the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 17 and verse 5. It says, they received the use of the 5 operations of the Lord, and in the 6th place he imparted them understanding, and in the 7th speech, and an interpreter of the cogitations thereof. So what are the 5 operations of the Lord? We call it, hold on. So the 5 senses of operations are sense of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. So all of this is controlled by what we call the mind, right? So the mind, the nature of the mind is to do what? Is to perceive the world outside. So you have an external world, an internal world, and what do we call them? The external world we call matter, and the internal world we call mind. So there's mind and matter, right? So we view the world through these operations. This is why people say there's a perception of reality and there's actual reality. So we perceive through the mind. So when we perceive, whether we hear something, see something, taste, touch, whatever it is, what we need to do, we need to discern it, right? And this is how you make a conscious decision, a decision made from your conscious self, your willpower. It has to go through that discerning, that sharp sword of the intellect has to dissect, look at it, both sides, and then you judge. Most of the times, what do? We think a thought and then we go straight into action, no discerning. And this usually happens when the emotion is very intense, which we're going to get into further on in this exercise, right? When the emotion is intense, it makes you skip the discerning process, right? So once you intake anything from the outside world, any form of perception, it goes into your memory, right? So everything from here goes here, right? Now, for example, we're talking about this, right? But you're not really processing much. Otherwise, you would stop from the beginning to be processing while the lesson is going on, the exercise is going on, right? So you're not really processing, but you're storing the information by default. So it's not yet discerned, it's stored just as you perceive it. So this is perceived data, right? Afterwards, now you go home, you start to go back over this, you start to look into it, you start to do this discerning. You discern the information, right? Now, after you discern it, what happens is this is where the ego comes up. The ego is I, I, me, myself. That's all the ego. I am intelligent. I am smart. I am wise. I am the good. I am the best father. I am the best whatever. It's all ego, right? What happens in the body? Your body, this physical, is an extension of this. This is why, for example, whatever you take in here, whatever you're thinking about, if you're thinking about a sad experience, you're going to experience that in your body. You're not going to be thinking a sad thought and you're going to be all excited and happy. No, it's an extension of the mind. So whatever is going on inside the mind, it manifests in the body. So when you're stressed, when something is bothering you up here, the anxiety is going to show up where? In the body. When you're excited about something, guess what? It's still going to be experienced in the body. This is the only medium to manifest the unmanifested. Now, everything that goes on at the conscious level goes on at the subconscious level, right? So this takes place here at the subconscious level. We divide the world in two. I like the black I don't like the red. We divide the world in two. But this division is only done from the standpoint of the mind. But from the standpoint of your spirit, the aware being, it's different. You perceive these two as neutral. You don't like one and you don't like or desire one and hate the other. You're neutral with it. You know, some people, they're all excited when it comes on to summer, but when it comes on to winter, they're blah, right? This is all mind work. From the standpoint of your spirit, you're neutral with when summer comes and it's hot, or when winter comes and it's cold. You don't like one and hate the other, right? So here, so in the subconscious level, you like something or you don't like something. This goes on same way in the memory. Now at the intellectual level, what happens is that we discern, but it's done more subconscious. For example, you might be physically doing something, you're at work, right? Your boss asks you for a report. Usually your report would take you 15 minutes, 10 minutes, right? But because somebody said something earlier that you don't like, that you didn't like, now you're processing it while you're doing the report. Now you're making a lot of errors in the report. So the same report that would take you 10, 15 minutes is now taking you 2 hours, right? Because you're processing subconsciously. So this continues on over here with things that you like and things that you don't like. You don't like what she said, what he said, what he did. You're processing it subconsciously while doing whatever you're doing, right? Because your intellect is divided in two, your concentration becomes weaker. So something that you're very good at doing, now is like you hardly can finish it. You can hardly complete the task, right? So that's what happens when you are part in the present and part in the past, or part in the present and part in the future. And it's way worse when you are part in the past and part in the future. You're not present at all. You're not here. The mind is gone and yourself is gone with the mind. Somebody has to say, hey, come back, right? So that's what happens here. And it goes down over here. This is where it forms a concept, and this unconscious concept, not even you don't know what it is. The only thing is that it's going to be manifested throughout different experiences in life. You won't even know it's there. That's why it's called unconscious, right? The subconscious is just a little bit below the conscious level. So you can catch up on yourself. But when it's here, you have no power over it, right? And this is why it's necessary to go back through past experiences so you can pull out, you can weed out what needs to be weeded out. You can wash yourself with the word, right? Now these concepts are stored in the memory here. So this concept comes here. So it's fixed, it's stored. And this is why when dealing with forgiveness, the memory is very important, because these will be your windows of opportunity to heal, to forgive. Not every day you're going to be feeling agitated or, pain, like you're feeling the pain over and over. Some days you're going to feel neutral. That's how the healing journey is. But when the memory of the event comes up, the intensity of the emotions are experienced at that moment. That is your window of opportunity to do what? Forgive. Forgive. That's why the scripture says you have to forgive 70 times 7. It's just saying that you have to do it a lot. The more you forgive, it's the less intense the emotion becomes until it dissolves. It dissolves in what? In your consciousness. That's the only place you can liberate. You can truly liberate yourself from. Everything else is bondage. This is the altar where you go and present your gift to the Most High. That's where true forgiveness takes place. All right? Now, the ego is the same. Right through is the same I, false identification of yourself. Right? In the body, you experience sensations. Right? So, in the unconscious, you're experiencing sensations. Sensations are more of how you experience your body inside. For example, you wouldn't refer to a headache as an emotion, right? Or a toothache. You would say that's more of a sensation. Or even things like hunger. It's how you experience it from inside. You say it's a sensation. Emotion is more like anger, the sadness, and so forth. Emotion is more like anger. When you're angry, you can say that's an emotion, right? Now, difference with sensations, emotions, and feelings. So sensations is more like how you experience your body from inside. Like you wouldn't refer to a headache or toothache as an emotion, but you'd say it's a sensation, right? Emotions, your body emotes. So like anger, you can say that's an emotion. Feeling on the other hand is both the emotions and the thought coming together. So the emotion is that direct thing you experience in your body from an external situation, whether you heard something, you perceive something, or whatever it is. And now you're trying to do what? The ego is trying to make sense of it, so it has to conjure a storyline behind what it perceives, what it perceives. So the feeling is a mixture of the emotions in the body and the thought in the mind. The mind produces feelings, right? So we understand all of this. Now we can start to explore everything about forgiveness. So the question is, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is the conscious decision, meaning this has to be done from the spirit, not from the mind, not from the ego, from your spirit, from your awareness, from your knowingness, from your willpower, from your higher nature, from your authentic self. That conscious decision that you make to let go of feelings of resentment, bitterness, anger, fear, hatred, all of those things, whether the person deserves your forgiveness or not, because it is not about them, it's about you. No, forgiveness is not to forget about the hurt, because that's what a lot of people believe. And this is why I said these are fixed concepts that we have, and sometimes we're not aware that we hold on to those beliefs. But when we go through life's experiences, we are manifesting behaviors that are coming from those thoughts. So what a lot of people do is they try to force things out of awareness as a way of forgetting the hurt. But that's not healing. That's just another form of denial. That's just doing what? Opening doors to addiction. Because one of the ways we forget about the hurt is by replacing it with something else. Smoking, drinking, music, relationships, partying, shopping, whatever it is. So we're not giving ourselves a chance for those thoughts to rise up in us, those sensations to rise up, so we can consciously discern them. And the more we ignore them, is the more you do what? If you plant a tree, right, and you start to ignore it, you don't go to prune it, you don't take care of it, what's going to happen? That tree is going to get so big to the point where your axe cannot cut it down anymore. And this is exactly what happens to our hurt, our pain. It becomes that great tree that you cannot hew down anymore. The next thing is forgiveness is not to condone the behavior. And we see this a lot in Roman marriages, right? It's very problematic because a lot of these churches, what they do is they condone the adulterous behaviors. So they want you to keep that marriage to maintain the image of the church. So you are there fighting a rebellious spirit, a demonic spirit, just to maintain the image of the church. But the image of the church is a real relationship with the Most High, His word, this which is what binds us. The vow, the word is the vow, the law that binds us into relationship with Him. When we don't do certain things, we shall be cut off. We cast ourselves away from the tribe. It's the same thing with this marriage. Your spouse is doing certain things that is dishonoring the marriage, dishonoring you, belittling you. You have to know that he or she is the one that's making that choice. It's removed from your hands, right? So don't condone certain behaviors that go contrary to your marriage, to your union, just to say you're married. You can't be that desperate after all, right? So stop condoning behaviors and think that is forgiveness. A lot of churches keep people in this type of situation. They know the immorality, they know the transgression, and they know that that person, that spouse, has a lot more to deal with. And it should not be in a relationship with this person because she has her life together, he has his life together, and they're with this person because you forced them to get into marriage when this person was not ready. The woman has to have the ha in her, the element of the Most High, just as the man has to have the Yah in him. The Yah is the thought, the deed, the action. This is why you have to be active in a woman's life. People complaining about submissive. You need to create that type of submissive relationship. How? You have to be active in her life. You can't be over here telling her over there what she needs to do or what she go and do it. Motivate her, give her some motivation. So you go and do it. She's going to inspire from what you're doing, and what? No, she's going to mimic you. Just like a child. You're doing this as a father. Guess what? The child, seeing daddy doing all these things, he's going to mimic. And that's how they learn. You lead by example. A lot of these congregations, what they do is they put people, they yoke people together who are not equal. People think that unequal yoke means that this person has this type of belief and this person has another faith, and that's unequal yoke. Okay, how many people you've done been with in your same congregation that you share the same beliefs right across the board, and the relationship still didn't work? It's more than that. This is what causes the unequal yoke. This is the root of all unequal yoke. Because somebody can have a different belief from you, but respects what you believe in and don't make it a problem in the relationship. While you are in a relationship with a person, you share the same feast days, the same holidays, whatever it is, but you still can't get along. Because of this, you cannot put an ox to plow with a mule. Now, forgiveness is not for you to make excuses for the behavior, because that's the favorite thing for the ego. Conjuring stories to justify. Where did we first see this? Adam and Eve. They made themselves apron. What does an apron do? When you're cooking and you put an apron, it's to do what? Cover you up. So these stories that we're covered under are all aprons, hiding our true selves. We hide among the trees in the garden. We hide among the nations. We hide our identity. So once we don't refer to ourselves as the people of the Most High, guess what? We can always be like the other people. Oh, I'm a Christian. I hold on to this belief, so I don't need to live like this. I can eat pork. I'm a Christian, and or Christ or whoever it is says we are forgiven. And it's the same with the Hebrews, whatever the belief is and how they live. The next thing, forgiveness is not reconciling relationships. Not always. Not all relationships need to be reconciled. For example, I've been in relationships where the person committed adultery, right? Do I forgive the person? Of course. I even supported the person through the shame and the guilt that comes with it, right? So nothing is wrong with that. But did I need to reconcile the relationship? No. That in itself puts the marriage to an end. We don't need to reconcile. But can you reconcile? If you want, you have the power to forgive. You have the power to reconcile. But you have to know, because if this is behind the act, you're going to have problems. So can it be discerned? Yes. Your spouse, probably she can lose somebody close to her, a mother, a brother, a friend, whatever it is, and it breaks her. And in that moment, she makes an unconscious decision. She didn't intentionally go against you. So in that case, you can apply forgiveness. That is reconcilable. Right? But if the person is intentionally doing that, if the person is intentionally disobedient, if the person is intentionally provoking you to wrath, why would you choose to be in that situation when you have the power to get out of it? This is what I talk about, conscious and willpower. You don't have to put up with all these things. When you forgive, you don't forget the hurt, because that's going to be very important to you. Why? Because if you know that this person has a tendency of doing a certain thing or behaving a certain way, you need to remember so you can be cautious when dealing with this person. If you go to this yard, your friend's yard, and this dog bites you, no matter how friendly the dog becomes or whatever gets used to you, you're still going to remember that he bit you, right? So it's the same with a person. You have to be cautious. You don't forget that they did this in the past. Not that you're holding on to it, but you're just remembering who they can be, right? As long as you're not holding them to something that they did not do to you. So if it's something they did in the past before you, and they said they wash themselves, they cleanse themselves, then you cannot hold that to say you're going to look out for it. You're going to be too vigilant. And that can be very uncomfortable in a relationship. You're going to make the other person feel very uncomfortable. All right, so they don't need to tiptoe around you. So the next question is, why do we forgive? We forgive to resist the temptation of the anger, the fear, the shame, everything that comes with that hurt. From developing into unforgiveness, what is this unforgiveness? Your pain and your hurt. Because once it goes here and you no longer pay attention to it, it gets so strong until, let us go to Ecclesiasticus 3 verse 24. It says, "For many are deceived by their own vain opinion, and an evil suspicion have overthrown their judgment." What are some of the evil suspicions? Anger, fear, resentment, bitterness, hatred, confusion, shame, guilt, etc. All those things you can name right there. Where do they come from? Let us go to the book of John, chapter 3 and verse 6. It says, "That which is born of the flesh is flesh." What is anger of? What is fear of? What is resentment? What is bitterness? What is confusion? What is shame, guilt? All of this is of the flesh. Just as I said earlier, your feelings come from where? The emotions and the thoughts that you attach to it. All of this is happening in the mind, in the ego, in the unconscious. So he says, back to the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 3 and 24, it says, "For many are deceived by their own vain opinion." Because a lot of our hurt comes from what? Attachment. You get into this relationship, you develop an unconscious attachment. And sometimes you don't even know that you have an attachment until something happens. And now you are forced to face the reality. And it destroys you completely. You thought this person didn't mean anything to you, but you're deeply attached because it's unconscious. After you took her for granted, you took him for granted. Now what happens? Your life is going downhill. And everyone that follows is taking you downhill. You cannot let go of what you had here, so now you're in this relationship, but your mind is over on that person that you were with. You have fixed concept about everything. Those fixed concepts are nothing but vain opinions. These are just perceptions. They're not real, but you believe in it as your reality. And it says, "And an evil suspicion." What is the evil suspicion? Your anger. Your anger has overthrown your judgment. So guess what? What is your judgment? Your ability to discern. So now you cannot discern anymore because you're too angry. When you're so angry, you know what happens? Everything gets ruined. Because your anger leads to a confusion of memory. So you started arguing about the phone. You're so angry, it changes topic to arguing about the water. No, you can't remember that it was actually a phone that started the argument. You see? Confusion. Confusion of memory. You're angry, you don't even remember why you're angry. You just move from topics to topics because what? Your ability to discern is overthrown by your own vain opinion. Because of your inability to forgive. Now let's go through an example of this situation, right? When you store much of this hurt, and pain. It doesn't matter if it's from the same person or other person, because like I said, this is already overthrown by your anger, your bitterness. So you cannot discern, right? So even if this person was the original person that caused you the pain, this person that's here now, you cannot discern between the two. So everything that this person deserves from your unconscious ego that wants to take revenge is going to do what? Impose on this person that you're currently with, even though he or she is innocent. So here's an example. When you were young, when you're a child, your father left. He went to a foreign country for work, right? He's going to come back. He's supposed to come back home to the family. But he went and take another wife. He abandoned your mother and you and your siblings, right? So you didn't deal with that. You didn't process that properly. So when you get bigger, you get into a relationship, you're talking to a man, and he does the same. He went to a foreign country to work to come back for you, but he didn't. He take another wife. You take another husband, and the cycle continues. Now, what happens when you take a husband who has no intention of living in a foreign country? You know what? When he gets that opportunity to go, everything that has already built up, not just from your past relationships with those people, but also from the original root, which was your father. So here we can put abandon or neglect, the feeling of neglect, right? That's another problem. So that evil suspicion of neglect has overthrown your judgment. You cannot discern to see that this person that you're with now, he has no intention of running away. He has no intention of not coming back home. He has no intention of not coming back to you. So now you tear the roof off because of this. This has become so strong to the point where it cannot be contained anymore. So it makes you into this aggressive monster. So all of this outburst is an unconscious reaction from the ego. You see, everything that is destructive so far comes from where? From the ego. What is the cause of all of this? The cause is because you were never consciously in those relationships. It is just your ego that is involved in the relationship. You are not there. You are far from the relationship. It is your ego and all the baggages of the unconscious ego. Because the relationship for the ego means what? Seek fulfillment. That's all it's there for. To overlook its own problems. How does the ego seek fulfillment? Smoking, drinking, cocaine, partying, shopping, sex. Just as I said earlier, there's a sense of lack. One of our biggest problems is what? Loneliness. What is it that we're lacking? Let's go to Psalms 23 and verse 1. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." The word want here is not how we think in English. It means lack. You are not short of anything once you have the Most High. Once you have the consciousness of this knowledge of your authentic self and of your source, you won't experience that loneliness. Now, when you're ignorant and you experience this loneliness, you know what happens? You're going to want everything to fill your needs, and nothing will ever suffice. This moment you want to do this, you can shop, but after a while, you're going to get bored of shopping. You're going to go partying. After a while, you're going to get bored of partying. You're going to be drinking. After a while, this drinking cannot do anything for you. You're going to have to add smoking. That's not going to do anything for you. You're going to have to add cocaine. After a while, that might not do anything for you. You are so numb, so the only thing you can do now to stop the pain is do what? Contemplate suicidal thoughts. Because you think that would be an easy way out. No pain. If you should allow yourself to get sober, you would start to feel your pain. But that's not a bad thing. That's the first start to healing, to actually heal. You're going to have to go back through everything over and over. But in the end, you're going to be free. So let's explore more about this lack that Psalms 23 is talking about. Let us go to the book of Hosea, chapter 4 and verse 6. It says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee." Do you see the similarity here? He said, you reject knowledge. No, he will also reject us. So what is the correlation with knowledge and the Most High? Connect the dots and you'll see. He didn't say, you reject me, so I'm rejecting you. He said, you reject knowledge. So again, what is the knowledge that we lack that is destroying us? Because it's not that we don't know the law about adultery while we keep committing adultery. It's not that we don't know the law about stealing while we keep stealing. It's not that that's not what it's talking about. The knowledge that we lack is the knowledge of our true self. We don't know the difference between our egos and our authentic selves. Everything we do comes from the ego. We have no control over this. This is why Paul says in Romans, let's go to the book of Romans chapter 7 and verse 15. It says, "For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that do I do." Let me read it again so we can process it. "For that which I do, I allow not." Meaning the things that I'm doing, this adultery, this smoking, this drinking, this partying, this hanging out with the wrong type of people, I allow it not. But I cannot stop myself because it's what? It's a habitual pattern of the unconscious ego. That's the battle within. It says, "For what I would," the things that your conscious self, that your spirit truly wants to do. I want to keep the law. I want to stop committing adultery. I want to renounce Christianity. I want to stop doing whatever it is. But you can't. It says, "For what I would, that do I not." You can't, because what? You ignore that for so long. The unconscious ego, the concept, has become so strong, like I said earlier, to the point where you cannot break it anymore. And all these methods that you're trying to do, you're going to your congregation every week, night services, whatever it is, it's not enough to break the chains of bondage. The only polar opposite to ignorance is knowledge. And if you are ignorant of your authentic self, it doesn't matter what laws you are learning. If you don't understand this won't mean much to you. Because it's not that we don't know what the law says we should not do. That's not the reason why we're breaking it. It's the reason why we are still breaking it is because the unconscious ego is predominant over the spirit. But what I hate, that do I do. I hate adultery, but I still do it. I hate smoking, but I still do it. I hate stealing, but I still do it. The worst thing you can do is trust someone who supports the very thing that they are against or claim they are against. Let me say that again so you can process. The worst thing you can do is to trust someone who supports the very thing that they claim they are against. Because in the time of battle, in the time of the heat of the moment, you are not going to know where they stand. They themselves won't know, but they're going to do what? Manifest the behavior of the unconscious ego because it's habitual. So we lack, what we really lack is the knowledge of our true self. And in this, through ignorance, what we do is we take on different identities. Like I said, this I, me, myself, it keeps on changing. For example, whatever emotion we're experiencing, we identify with it. So today we say, I am depressed. Tomorrow I am anxious, right? Next day I'm confused. Later on, I am sad. Next minute, I am fearful. We keep changing our identity. But in that statement, the truth is there, right? So, for example, when you say, I am sad, I am angry, I am this, I am that, what you notice that is always there. This is our true identity. I am. Anything else we add to it is a limitation. You're putting this in a box of anger. You're putting this in a box of fear. You're putting this in a box of confusion. So you do what? You keep forgetting the truth of what you are. And now you do what? You adapt to a belief that this is who you are. You are not your pain. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your resentment. You are not your hatred. Once you can understand that, you can make a separation between what you are and what you aren't. So now you have two things. So now you're able to discern. So this is the internal work. You're not dealing with the anger, the fear, the resentment, and so forth yet. You're dealing with your authentic self. This is what you are. And this is how you confuse what you are for a feeling. Like I said, the feeling is the emotions and the thought that is attached to the emotions. Why you when it comes down to your headaches, you don't identify yourself with your headache because there's no story there. The ego is not there. The ego doesn't say I am the headache. You see, you say I have an headache. You say I have a headache. So by saying I have something, you're making a clear distinction between what you are and what you have. When you say I am depressed, there's no distinction. You merge them into one. So it is through separation we understand the universal law of the Most High. Let us go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 33, and verse 15. It says, so look upon all the works of the Most High, and there are two and two, one against the other, one against another, day and night. Why are we ignorant of the consciousness of it? Because we merge them into one. We can't discern between day and night. Universal law, the sun goes beyond the horizon, the western horizon. Guess what's happened? You're separated from day. You're binded into what? Night. There's always two and two. It is in the knowledge of separation the truth manifests itself. And when you start to separate what you are from what you aren't, in that moment is when you understand the truth of what you really are, your authentic self. Let us go to the book of John, chapter 8 and 32. It says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." What truth? Yes, we can go to precepts to say the law is truth, right? Thou shalt not do this or whatever else that is stated in the law, the ordinances, the commandments, the judgments, all of that. But let's be honest, the people who aren't free, the people who are still suffering from all these things, is it that they don't know the laws, the commandments, the statutes, the ordinances, the judgments? No, what they don't know is the truth of what they really are. So they're in bondage to their own sufferings. So now we're going to free ourselves, right? We're going to free ourselves through this knowledge. So the ignorance can dissolve in this knowledge, right? Let's make a statement here. I'm going to write a statement and I would like you to answer the question that follows. Okay, now we're going to discern if it's the same I. It says, I saw the ball and I touched the ball. Now the question is, the same I that saw the ball, was it the same I that touched the ball? Process that for a moment. What is this I, or who is this I that we're talking about? What is the nature of it? Nature meaning that which it cannot do without. For example, what is the nature of honey? Sweet. Honey cannot be without sweet. The honey is the sweet, and the sweet is the honey. That is its nature. What is the nature of this that both sees and touch? It is your awareness, your consciousness, the spirit within. The spirit is aware of what you perceive. This eye is aware of the appearance of the ball. This eye is also aware of the sensation of the ball. So you see, exploring this will bring you to the truth of your authentic self. So know that we understand there's a difference, right? So we have the mind, the body, and we also have the spirit. So now that we know these three things, right, it's going to go into our next question, which is, who is doing the forgiving? Because most of the times we use the term forgiving or forgiveness, we still go back to the ego. We still go back to the mind. So we will say, yes, I forgive you. But yet every time you talk about what this person did, you feel that fiery sensation burning inside. That does not happen when you forgive. So saying you forgive is different from actual forgiveness. Just like saying you accept is different from actual acceptance. On your journey to forgiveness, the memory is very important. This is why the Messiah said, forgive 70 times 7. You got to forgive a lot. Because what? The unconscious memory is always going to do what? Resurface the matter to your consciousness. So no matter how much you try to keep yourself in denial, drinking, smoking, hanging out, keep yourself busy, you want to take all the kids, you don't want to give them to the other parent, so you can keep that stress life active. You can keep that ego active under stress. So you don't have to pay attention to what's really happening, right? The memory has this way of pushing it up to the consciousness. So every time it comes up, you take a moment and you forgive. The more you forgive, like I said, is the less intense it will become until you're thoroughly washed with the word. It is not in the moments where you're just having a neutral day, okay, it's not bothering you. Those aren't moments where you actually apply forgiveness. It is when it comes up. Sensations, emotions, thoughts, everything going on at the same time. And you remain calm. You take a pause. You stop whatever you're doing. Take 5 minutes. Allow the feeling to come up until it goes away. Those are your windows of opportunity for forgiveness. Let us go to the book of Matthew chapter 6 and verse 12. It says, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Forgive us our debts as we. So what's happening here with the forgiveness? The more you learn to forgive others, is the more this forgiveness is taking place inside. So in the process, you're also forgiving yourself. You're also forgiving the experience. You're forgiving the wrong that was done to you. So it's not about going, praying, asking for forgiveness or whatever. It's something to do. While you're forgiving the experience, you're also forgiving yourself. So the spirit within is the forgiver, is the one that's going to redeem you. Because the source is going to be in agreement with the spirit. The Most High has already permitted or allowed the forgiveness. It is this that is going contrary to forgiving. This likes to be in the river in Egypt. It likes to be in denial. So like I said, forcing things out of awareness is not healing. You know that you're healed from the hurt when you no longer feel these sensations, when you're talking about something that broke you in the past. Now, even with that, you have to be careful because this is very subtle. It's the most subtle beast of the field. Because what it will do is it will change its belief. You know, Satan appears like an angel of light. This minute is this minute is that, right? It's a chameleon. The ego is a chameleon. It will change its belief through rejection, most commonly through rejection. So in a way you compromise, meaning what? Now your self-esteem is lowered. So you become more numb to your reality. And in this case, you don't really feel hurtful feelings anymore. For example, after rejection, it goes into what? Self-reject. How do we do this? You are in a monogamous relationship, or you are in monogamous relationships. You're always being cheated on. So now what do? You change your stories. So you said you will no longer be that woman that is being cheated on. So now you are going to be the woman that they cheat with. It's the same thing for the man. You've been cheated on before. So you said, you know what? I'm no longer going to be this man. So now you start going to people who already are in relationships. And this is what it means to be with anybody. Anybody doesn't mean the person looks a certain way or doesn't have certain ambition or whatever. It's not about that. Anybody is when you compromise. Once you start going against your own standard. So a moment ago, you were all about monogamous relationships. No, you are about the one that's destroying monogamous relationship. This is what I said earlier about trusting someone who supports the very thing that they are against. Because when this person comes into a relationship with you, they're going to tell you that they're monogamous. But the unconscious concept is that they support polygamy. They support the destruction of monogamous relationships. And this is all done unconsciously. This is the ego's way of protecting itself. But in the process of protecting the fragile ego, you are destroying your own soul, you're destroying your spirit. You're devaluing yourself. Your self-worth is going down. And it even becomes more painful when you for the woman, end up getting pregnant in that situation. Because it's going to be hard for this man to do what? To take the child, take you and say, go to his wife and family and say, hey, I have a wife, I have another wife, I have a baby, and let's be one big family. No, that's the time he's going to reject you. And what you think is going to happen? He's going to reject you from you're pregnant. So you're dealing with that rejection while being pregnant. All those hormones, everything you're transferring to the baby. So this baby is experiencing the trauma of rejection even inside the womb. How you think that person is going to grow up? Because you're not going to process your rejection, much more to give attention to the child's rejection. No, she's going to grow with the mindset, the concept, the unconscious concept that the father was never there. She's not lovable. No one wants to be with her. And because of that poor relationship with the father, probably she decides to be with women. So we're playing with some serious things here. No, when can a person ask for forgiveness? Because everyone always, after the transgression with the Most High, they do what? They run to the altar and they pray and ask for forgiveness. But what happens after you pray, ask for forgiveness for something that you did last week? You go back and do it again next week because the pattern of your unconscious ego. You can only ask for forgiveness when you surrender or give up the ego. So giving all these gifts at the altar, your offerings, your tithes, whatever it is, your sacrifices, the Most High doesn't need that. What he needs is obedience. And in order for you to obey, you have to first surrender the ego. You can only give what belongs to you. So when you go and take the firstlings of your flocks, right? You go and take your vegetables, your wine, your wheat for heave offerings, for wave offerings, whatever it is. Who gave that to you? You only sow the seed in the earth. The Most High is the one who gives the increase. So how are you going to offer something to him that he gave to you? You need to give him something that he didn't give to you. Your ego, right? The ego, where does it come from? If you should get into the depths of it, it comes from mother and father. The in Adam is the blood, is the spirit. The spirit comes from the Most High. The dam is the Hebrew word for blood. Blood comes from both parents. Your genetic makeup, mother and father. The ego comes from this part of you. It doesn't come from your spirit. This is what you sacrifice on the altar. That's the only time you can ask for forgiveness. Otherwise, you are going to go back to do the same habitual behaviors of the unconscious ego. Let's be honest. How many of us keep praying for the same thing and doing the same thing over and over, and we're stuck in that cycle? Transgress, pray for forgiveness. Transgress, pray for... How many of us? So, for you to ask a person for forgiveness, you have to first recognize, you have to first realize that you did something wrong, whether you did it intentionally or unintentionally. The next thing is to understand the extent to which you hurt the person. You have to see the value the person placed on you, to trust you, believe in you. And you broke all of that. You understand what it does to that person. You have to understand the stress that comes with it. For example, this person is your best friend and you wanted to do something. You took up, you saw this, you took up his money or her money. You went and buy something that you needed to get for that day, right? But the person needed that money to buy medications for his grandmother. So you are only thinking about, I'm sorry I took it up and I should have asked and so forth, right? And I'm going to give you back next week. But you're not understanding the stress because the grandmother needs the medication now. That's the part that we have to recognize. So when we transgress against the Most High, we have to understand how much he values us. So each time we do things contrary, this is the effect from what we caused. It's the same when we transgress against one another. So what is an apology? How did you teach your children to apologize? When your little child does something wrong, what do you say to the child? I am sorry, and I won't do it again, mommy, or daddy, or whoever, right? So one part of the apology is to, yes, say you're sorry, but when you express the sorrow of it is what? When you express the sorrow of what you did wrong, now you do what? You don't do it again. So the more important part of an apology is a changed behavior. It's not just saying you're sorry, but you have to renounce the behavior. That is the true apology. Let's go to the book of Hosea chapter 15 and verse 5. It says, the book of Hosea chapter 5 and verse 15. It says, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me early. You see that? You have to recognize, you have to acknowledge that you did something wrong, and to the extent What if a person knows that they hurt you, but they don't have the courage to tell you? I mean, they can tell anyone else, but they just cannot tell you. They cannot admit, they cannot confess it to you. Ego. They'll acknowledge their offense to everyone else. For example, you have your relationship, you know the vows of your relationship. You have sex with someone else, right? No, you can talk to your friends about it. You can talk to your counselor, but you never can face your spouse and tell them what you did wrong because the ego is still present. When you can tell the person you actually hurt or did the wrong, just like when you transgress against the Most High, who do you go to in prayer to confess your sins? You go to the Most High, right? So if you transgress against this person, why do you go to this person to confess? I mean, it's okay if you can confess to these people, but it only carries weight when you confess to the person that deserves it. Now, the next question is, should you punish after you forgive someone? And what is the purpose of the punishment? The answer is yes. You still have to punish after you forgive. And the purpose of that is to correct the person. The Most High does forgive us. Does He put us through slavery still? Yes. Right? So in relationships, a lot of times you say you forgive people, but then you have no judgment behind. So this is why the person never really get the lesson. You never show them what it means for you. You have not established proper boundaries. You're just saying, don't do this. But when the person does it, you don't do anything. There's nothing that follows. Right? So it's the same even with our children. We do these things. They do something good. We don't reward them. We need to let them know when they make a difference. So when they do something good, we need to reward them with something that they like. Take them to the beach. Take them to this. Do this. Whatever it is. Play with them a little bit. Whatever it is. So it's the same when they do something bad. You have to punish them so they don't repeat that behavior. A lot of times we don't want to make differences in when a person is doing good or bad. So your child, if they do something wrong, they still have the same access to all their gadgets, the internet, the phone, whatever it is, right? Their weekly allowances, whatever you give them. That doesn't make any sense. You have to remove something so they can learn, so they can be corrected. And it's the same with your partner. Your partner is cheating or doing certain things, and you are just still staying there. You argue, but you still stay there. There is no action that follows. He's going to take you for a joke. She's going to take you for a joke. If you know you're not leaving, or if you know you're not strong enough to leave, it's best you try to remain silent, at least for now, until you have the strength. But don't make all these talks, and then when the person does the same thing, it's just talk, and then you go back to lay with the person. You don't even withdraw sex to let him or her understand how disgusting this is and how it alters something up here. You don't show any differences. So how are you going to correct the person? You don't correct by always arguing or talking about their poor behaviors. You're overlooking yourself for condoning those behaviors because you didn't establish proper boundaries, proper rules, proper values. So just remember, you don't punish people for revenge or to get even. A lot of people, their partner went out and have sex. What do? They go out and do the same. But you're lowering your self-esteem. Yes, this person just belittled you, but no, you're belittling yourself. Just like what I said earlier about rejection. You feel as if this is a form of rejection from your partner, and now you are rejecting yourself by doing the same thing. So the thought behind the revenge is, I want you to feel what you made me feel when you did what you did to me. The thought behind forgiveness is, I know how this feels, and I wouldn't want to hurt you that way. So you see, one is empowering. One is a conscious decision. Revenge is automatic. Revenge is a reaction. This is why it's easier to revenge than to forgive. Where love is present, forgiveness is easy. With some people, after they did you wrong, that's when they actually understand. Some people, they will do you wrong, but it's only if you catch them, then they will understand. Some people, it is when you punish them, they will understand. But then there are some people, after punishment, we still don't understand. No matter how much the Most High whips us, we keep getting into all these types of relationship that He said we should not get into. And He keeps whipping us. He keeps afflicting us. We still don't understand. Right? So I hope that this can clear up some things about forgiveness, and it will help you to liberate yourself. Shalom.